Okay, so let's take a look at number 1 on your test, and we're writing an expression. It says the difference between a number squared and 5. So we don't know what that number is. That's why it says a number squared. I'm just going to use x, and I'm going to use an exponent of 2 to represent the fact that it's squared. We know that difference means subtraction. So I'm going to have some subtraction in there. The difference between a number squared and 5. So it's going to be x squared minus 5. Whenever it says the difference between two things, whatever comes first is what you write first in your expression, and then whatever comes second comes second. So that's why I did x squared first. For number 2, it says 4 divided by something. So I'm going to do 4, and I'm not going to use my little childish division symbol. I'm going to use a fraction. So 4 is divided by something, the product of a number and 7. So we know that product means that we're going to multiply. We don't know what number it is, so I'm going to use n to represent it, and 7. So that means we're going to multiply 7 times a mystery number. So I'm going to write it just like that with the 7 next to my variable that represents my mystery number. 4 divided by 7 times a number. For number 3, we've got an order of operations question. And I noticed on your test that several of you guys took this exponent and put it in the parentheses before you did what you were supposed to do. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, parentheses comes first. So you need to do what's in the parentheses first. So 5 minus 3 is 2. Then we're going to square the 2. So 2 squared is 4. 4 plus 1, of course, is 5. For number 6, remember that when you've got multiple sets of parentheses, you do what is the inside parentheses first. So I'm going to start right here. 5 minus 5 is 0. Then I'm going to bring down everything else. 2 minus 0 is 2. Still going to rewrite everything else. Now I'm going to do that multiplication first. So I'm going to do that 6 times 3 and get 18. Oops. 18 minus 2, is 16. For number 5, I saw lots of mistakes when you were putting your numbers or substituting them into the expression. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a -1 for x, the minus from the problem, and then that y is a -4. So when I substitute everything into the parentheses, I've got a 1 or a -1 in for x, and then a -4 in for y. So I should have -1 minus -4. The exponent is on the outside of the parentheses. And then what I also noticed a lot of you guys doing is that y'all just kind of forgot about this y that's hanging out here to the side. That is why I've told you before, please, please, please rewrite all of your steps as you go down, because, I mean, literally, like, a ton of you guys forgot about that y. You did the parentheses part, and then you just kind of forgot about that -4 at the end. So the first thing I'm going to do, though, is look inside of these parentheses. So because I've got minus a negative, I'm going to go ahead and turn that into a positive. So I got to do what's in the parentheses first before I deal with that exponent. So -1 plus 4 is going to be 3. Now I'm going to do the 3 squared, but I'm not going to forget. I'm going to bring the rest of my stuff down. So 3 squared is 9, plus a -4 should have given me a 5. For number 6, I'm going to substitute in my values. So I'm going to put in a -3 for k, plus a -3 in for j, plus another -3 in for j, divided by 3. And then put my exponent on the outside. So first thing I'm going to do is deal with what's inside of the parentheses. -3 divided by 3 is a -1. I'm going to rewrite everything. Bring it down. Now here's where a lot of you guys went wrong on your test. -1 times a -1 is a positive 1. Lots of you guys left that as a -1. So then, if I bring everything else down, a -3 plus a -3 is a -6, plus a positive 1 should have given you a negative 5. All right, let's take a look at these properties. We didn't do so hot on this section as a general rule. Let's see how we could have eliminated some choices and see what's going on here. So the first one is that you're adding a 0 to 2x. So we know it's not going to be this one because it involves multiplication. So you can at least eliminate b. Some of us picked b, though. I'm not really sure why. So it's not going to be b. Associative property means you're deciding who is actually associated together, like which ones are grouped together. So that's why it's this one right here, because you notice that 6 times 3 is associated on the left side inside of those parentheses, and then the parentheses move over, and now 3 times 5 are kind of like grouped together or associated together. Associative property is when nothing changes except the parentheses move around. So that one is A. Okay, whenever you're adding 0, so I know it's not associative. I know that the first one is not the inverse property because it's multiplication. So it's got to be either C or D because these are the only two that involve adding, and clearly I'm adding here. Commutative property is just like I've said before, when your parents like commute to work, you are going in different directions, like your direction changes, but your distance is still the same. Commutative is right here. Commutative means that the order of the numbers has changed. So 3, 4, negative x over here, 3, negative x, 4 over there. So the order of the numbers has changed, but it's still all the same stuff. So this one is going to be C, commutative. And then for identity property, identity means that you add something to the number, but it doesn't change its identity. See how this was 2x before I added 0, and now it's still 2x. So this one is identity property, D. And then last but not least, inverse property, right here. This is technically a 3 over 1, which is kind of the multiplicative inverse of 1 over 3. So we're going to multiply those together, and they're going to cancel each other out. So that gives you B, inverse property. Okay, for all of these, we're simply doing some distributive property. So I've got 4 times a 9x, which is 36x, and then 4 times negative 3, which is a negative 12. Here, I've got negative 2 times 8x, which is negative 16x. Then I've got negative 2 times 8, which is negative 16. Negative 9 times a negative k is a positive 9k, not a negative, like a lot of you guys said. And then a negative 9 times a positive 8 is a negative 72. Some people put a positive 72. So when I bring down that 3 that goes with it, negative 72 plus 3 is a negative 69. So that's why my final answer is 9k minus 69. Then I've got distributive here. 5 times p is 5p. 5 times 4 is 20. Notice here when I do my distributive, that's a negative 5. So that is minus 20, and the negative 5 times p is a negative 5p. Lots of you guys said it was a positive 5p, but that's a negative 5 times a positive p. So look what happens when we combine our like terms. I've got a 5p and a minus 5p, so those guys are just going to cancel each other out. I've also got a 20 and a negative 20, so those are also going to cancel each other out. So if you simplify, you should end up with a 0. Most of us got number 12 and 13 right. So when you're doing the amount of water used during a shower, man, you certainly don't want to measure it in ounces because, wow, that's kind of mind-blowing how many ounces you use during a shower because ounces are really little. Cups are still a little too small. You want to measure the amount of water during a shower in gallons because it doesn't have to be that accurate. Gallons is close enough. And for number 13, okay, most plants grow in a single day, a teeny tiny, like you can't even see it with it. You need time-lapse photography to actually see it grow in a day. So inches and feet really don't make any sense because it's not going to grow, that much in a single day. So millimeters is the one that makes sense. For number 10, they took a 10-question quiz, and we want to know how many of each grade was there in the results. So if an A is 90%, well, 90% of 10 questions is just going to be a 9. So I'm going to go ahead and label the kids who got a 9 or higher that got an A. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 kids that got an A. I'm going to make myself kind of a makeshift table right here. So then to get a B, you needed to get at least an 80%. So 80% of 10 is 8. So I'm going to go through here and mark the kids who didn't get an A that I've already counted, but who got high enough to get a B, so an 8 or greater. So I got 1, 2, and 3 Bs. A C is going to be 70% of 10, which is a 7. So, or I'm sorry, I think I just said B. I meant to say C, in case I said the wrong thing. So my C's are going to be this guy and that guy. So there's 2 C's. D's are going to be 60%. So we see where we're going at this point. 60% is going to be a 6. So that one right there is a D. So I got 1 D. And then finally, that one guy who's kind of crowded right now, but that 4 is going to be my 1 F. Some of you guys left off the F for some reason when you did your answer. Not sure what's up with that. Okay, for number 15, this one was bonus, but I'm going to go ahead and work it for you anyway. So Micah's debt to income ratio. Remember, the debt goes on top, the income goes on the bottom. So he's got $1,000, $300, and $200, so a total of $1,500 that he spends on debts going out. And he's got $3,000 in income. So his debt to income ratio is 15 over 3,000, or 1,500 over 3,000, which simplifies to 1/2 if you choose to do that. As a decimal, of course, 1/2 is simply 0.5. And does he qualify? It says his debt to income ratio must be below 30 hundredths. So no, he does not qualify because 0.5 is greater than 0.30. What could he do to improve his ratio? You could have done a lot of things for this answer. You could say he get a better job to make more money. You could say he could get rid of his car so he doesn't have a car payment anymore, find a cheaper place to live. All kinds of stuff like that would have been acceptable. I took a lot of different answers, but anything that would lower his expenses or raise his income would work.